you? Good to hear from out of town. Everybody, except Mark. I'd like to introduce Mike Koblick. He's the president and CEO of ElectroAir. They do the certified electronic ignitions for general radiation. And he's not going to hit you with a PowerPoint presentation. We're just going to do it as an informal question and answer session. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike right now.
How's everybody doing? I'd like to thank Roscoe for inviting me down to the Greater Cincinnati Art Building Competition. Felt like that about 10 miles north of Cincinnati. The day when it started to come down, like, oh, wait a minute, we're going to talk about airplanes. I'll give a little background about me, about the company, and then we'll talk about the system and answer whatever questions that you might have. You know Roscoe, so you know how it's impacted the airplanes that he's working on in the Grumman community. Similar results, really on everything. Most of them, certainly. I had a gentleman today with plans to call me up and say, I read this thing in ABS that it says I save gas and go faster. Is that really true? I said, I think you wrote that. That might be Chris Holder. He's one of the ABS technicians. Yes, absolutely. So I wish I don't own a banana, so I can't speak to the person. But it is what we have seen, certainly in most applications. Yeah, my name is Mike Koblick. I'm one of the owners of ElectroAir. My partner and I bought ElectroAir back in 2005 from a gentleman by the name of Jeff Rose. Down the street in Chattanooga, started the business in 1992. Jeff is, I think he's still alive, he was the consummate tinker. He was a programmer at IBM. He built Christian's aviation for 5 different airplanes, a couple of very easy and long easy kit flights. And along the way, he found a hot rod ignition system, and he adapted it to aircraft engines. That's what ElectroAir became. He started that business in 1992, sometimes referred to as the Jeff Rose ignition system. It's also the ElectroAir system. In 2003, 4-ish, somewhere in there, my partner was an air builder, and he found a cozy that right that put it in the hangar, went to do an engine test, started it up to the right zone, but the engine shut off, and then this electronic ignition system. So people are the engine ignition system, and he calls up the guy and says, "Hey, would you look at this ignition system?" Now I'm really kind of trying to validate him. He talking to me a little bit. Well, he was either going to close it or sell it or do something. So we acquired it shortly after that. Actually, the conversation with Pete that I wanted to get to Chicago ACO, because I bought another business from Pete that was Nancy Prince. We had a mutual friend who had just retired from General Motors. He was describing this company, this ignition system, and this stuff, in the interest of letting Jim know about it so that he could acquire the retirement. I had done a bunch of certification work with Diamond Aircraft up in Canada. As I'm listening to the story, I said, I thought we get that thing certified. And he said, really? How would you go about doing that? One cert plan, flight testing, 60. I said, hey, piece of cake, right? How do you get anything certified, especially like this through the FAA? A lot of time, a lot of money. So we acquired it with the idea of we had an existing business going, and we could go ahead and certify it and do that. That took a little longer than we thought. We bought it in 2005. We got our first STC in 2001. A lot of reasons for that. Namely, I focused the time initially on the experimental business to make sure we could have that stone certification. And then it was just a function of what resources we got. Our first STC we won in 2011, 4-cylinder Y-point engines, with specific applications and Cessnas. Shortly after that, 2008, 2011, 2012, we opened up a 4-cylinder expansion. 4-cylinder STC expanded that to a number of other models. Since that time, we've also done another STC for 6-cylinder Y-point continentals. We've also done a switch panel SDC to replace the key switch. Last week, we got Frank Lumley solution for you guys up there fixed. But ours, it fits better. Everything itself. Just keep up. We've got probably a little over 400 aircraft models between the two STCs listed on there. We've shipped over 1,000 units now. Most of them are installed. I don't think there's anything good at no distributions, so most all of those are installed. We're seeing over 50,000 hours a year being put on our system. At the time we did the STC, one of the questions that the FAA asked is, how much time do you have on your systems in which they're running? 3,500 or so, 692. It's wet. There's no question it's wet. But based around 50-hour typical flight year for most people, 50 hours, we've got just shy of $1 million first testing. So, what questions can I ask? How's your failure rate? How is my failure? In what sense? How many failures do we have? Yeah. Most of the failures that we've had recently in the league is okay. We made a change here recently that had to do with the power distribution of our Grumman system. Yes, she found food. She's announcing to everybody there's food. Besides, go ahead and go in there. Canine police officer. Civilian community said, "Oh, he was the coolest guy. Went to goes in, hey, that food. You don't turn down 150 pounds for the check. Failure rates that we've had historically, it's a fair question. In the experimental world, we had issues with our spark plug wires. Like the assembly of the spark plug wire ends. We've actually gone through 2 evolutions since I've had it, changing the hardware, and now we change the actual spark plug wire itself. We've pass this around. We had an issue with only back in the spark plug. When you do the certification on something like this, because it's electronic, it's got control boxes going on the airframe, and it's also the ignition system. We had to go through environmental hazard testing. Affectionately known as DO-160. DO-160 testing is a government standards, military standards that the FAA generally accepts for where it's break it down into part 23, 5, and 7. We passed noise. We passed the requirements for radio noise, suppression, ignition, both. And it assumes a level of suppression that airframe tolerate. There's an airframe, if you think of radio, the ability to suppress radio noise being a glass, and the water being the radio noise itself. That glass has the ability to contain that noise to a certain level. Once you reach the top of this, we had a real problem with Cirrus aircraft. We had, I think, 3 or 4 different installations. We had constant radio noise issues. We went through a lot of testing, a lot of field work. We spent close to $20 grand at a couple of different shops just trying to sort this out. Never being able really to get down to the bottom. I had a customer up in the Northeast call me, shop up in the Northeast, say, Mike, you ever heard of this company called Magnaport? And this is on smart ware. It's made by a company called Magnaport. They do a lot of sophisticated hot rod wire. And we have this particular product, which is a KV85, that is meant for high energy ignition systems and noise suppression. Like, sure. So, well, hypothetically, what do you think will happen? As Jim is, what do you mean hypothetically? What you do?
You get to see it.
Well, no, I can't.
There's no wire. Same wire I have on the board.
What you find out?
$5,400.
He put a set on with Cirrus and radio. So we experimented with 2 or 3 more times. Took care of the radio problems. But that what we changed under all of our kids. A little bit of overkill on metal airplane, although the issues with some metal airplanes, older ones particularly, when you have airplanes age, the wiring systems and their ability to suppress noise interiors. We had a Bonanza as a matter of fact, in that case. Put the system on, we had radio. If you go through the evolution of what this Bonanza went through as a addition to getting part of the convention system, he had an autopilot replaced, an engine rebuilt, and a brand new interior built. We ended up having a shop in Texas that I do. What he did with the autopilot, it's the old autopilot out. But instead of removing all the glare harness from the old autopilot, put the new autopilot in, and then married the new harness into the old harness. Great for the shop that did it, because it saved them probably about 15 hours. That just opens up all kinds of problems with introducing gremlins into your electrical system against noise. The shop that we had look at the Bonanza down there as well, we said, you need to replace, and there were other issues with this Bonanza as well, different wiring issues. It had ground planes, antenna connections, and also connection point. Just a whole variety of problems. Shop that looked at it, the guy, Anthony Aristides, really good engine guy. He looked at him, and he's also happens to be really good avionics. So the only way to fix this old airplane, it's a 1965 airplane. There's the whole warranty. All that old stuff. Get rid of all the sins that have taken place in the maintenance world in the past. That would require material. The owner and I agree. Don't take out that interior again. Anybody ever do a pizza interior? The engine interior? I did it once. Smoking a friend. Never do that. That messy, and so we ended up taking the system off. He had engine problems and so that's right. What other sorts of troubleshooting issues have we seen? I had a gentleman in Canada that owns the engine far harder than it should. Wide open throttle, it means back to about 16 miles per hour. It's over 10. The paper for 25 years that he's had this airplane, versus 7 times. Wow. 42. He's actually up closer to 50 now. Yeah, well, and he's running it. He's running it too hard, native gate, back, running the test. One of the things with an electronic ignition system, because it's a high energy tuned ignition system, you should expect your cylinder temperatures to go up. 20 to 30 degrees is what we expect. You also expect your EGTs to decrease. The reason the cylinder head temps are going up, you're doing a much more efficient job burning fuel in here inside of your cylinder. So you see it in multiple, 20 to 30 degrees. If they go up much beyond that, we have instances where we've got people looking at 40 to 50 degrees. That's it. We want to start looking at it. We can install the time blades. Just that. What other problem do we expose? The ignition is set in our ignition, for example, goes into the engine, the top dead center. This unit here for mag timing, we affectionately call it mag timing housing, MTH. This is our trigger mechanism for the engine. Again, I needed those hot rod ignition systems. It actually defines its roots back to the General Motors HEI system. The original systems that GM used to use the 68+22 turbo for the crank position sensor. This bolts in place of one of the torpedoes because the accessory cases need one-to-one crankshaft. This gives you crank position. This gives you your RPM and your engine position. This unit has ability top dead center number one cylinder. Some airplanes, timing marks are set up for this 25 degrees. If you do that, you mechanically add 25 degrees of timing to that engine. And it will tell you when that happens, if you fly it for any length of time, like 200 hours or 52, detonated all the top, all things. Very nice little pattern. Very painful. Ignition actually, but it appears the same. That happened in 152. Installed it 25 degrees before top wood center. Storm wire. This was a pretty large place. And they kept chasing the target. And we went back and made them evaluate the post-mortem of that. That's the time. We're required by the we see a failure like that. We have to self-report to the FAA. Whether we did it or not, we were all the FAA found out the unit was installed. And only verified it's a classic case of having too many people in the chain of the conversation. I was talking to the director of maintenance who's trying to oversee almost 150 airplanes, everything from 152 to the Q, UH-1. He's trying to communicate that to the technician. Just lost. Real estate engine. Installation issues are also a real common thing that we tend to have. Grounding, the top of the switches. We've had the system itself, and you can see it's made up of multiple components. Many times it doesn't go back. That's on the firewall. That's very directly to your structures. Controlling the pressure system. This unit, the system requires essentially 2 separate circuits. So you have a 2 amp circuit to power B plus here, and a 10 amp circuit to power here. And instances where there's something reversed, so it's a 10 amp breaker here and a 2 amp breaker on this. I'll pause that for a little. Circuit breaker will get long, it'll open up. And it stops firing. Controlling code is designed to look at that and sees this no longer firing. It shuts itself down. In theory, this is quit working for some reason. There's been a catastrophic failure of the system. Something don't know what it is. This doesn't know what it is. We're not going to be firing until we completely shut ourselves down. Problem with that, the fleet's going forward. We got to the point where I said, we have to hear that. And he's there in 5 minutes. He took his wife. What the hell is it? Take your wife, get yourself down here on Thursday, see what you can do on Friday, and then you and your wife play fun for the rest of the day. He gets down there, he looks at his team. You got this one, this one, right? Okay, great. Another one that we've had, in terms of the same idea, is that we've got these wire sections, these series. Great. That works when the speed of light is perfect. But sometimes this gets powered up first before, or I'm sorry, this gets powered up before this gets powered up. This will not fire if it does not see this being powered up. Again, once we straighten out that wire, we sort it out. Other issues that we've got, I don't think we see it so much in the Grumman world, but they do with the different assessor key switch, but the switch. The aim of my existence is build up. Yeah. These things about 60%, 70% of the time they function correctly. So a key switch is a ground path switch that is normally open. So you select, so we're at load right now. We're at load here. the last position. Anybody ever notice that some of the pieces that they have written up first? Do they know why they did that? I'm asking the question, but I don't know. Well, start on back.
No, you're talking about the
Position. So take off, right, left, hook. Okay.
you're talking about the one without start.
Yeah, that. Well, any of them, new ones with the starter button. Yeah.
Start button, when you hit start, it automatically shuts off the right way.
Right.
These you have to manually do it.
But my question, well, okay, so it's one button off the top. I mean, that helps, you know, the cross. I thought it was some engineer sitting there, so I didn't. That's true with these. I think that, look. Well, you know, and maybe that's why I feel kind of foolish for us. Okay, so when you're in both, you got both switch position by select left, ground path goes to the right magneto, effectively taking that energy from the battery and shuts it off. Both, will be right. With the electronic ignition, what we end up crowding out, what we end up shutting off. So if you select the mag's in the left position, the electronic ignition is in the right, so you have RTD button. How you know what's being generated by the time. Go back to both. Electronic ignition on the left out. It's electronic controlling must find itself in third. There's then you without it. There's two missing teeth there, but that's the both. See the two missing teeth. Go on resolution. It fits this way. If we loiter in between left and right too long, contacts in here are not functional, not maintained properly. Anyone can go ahead and but the delay can become exaggerated in some system. You won't go without. We went to one of the other stories. We had a operator in Washington. First flight of every day. Started up there on the May. In 19, April, May, March, April, May, so it's 40, 50 degrees. Really high humidity climate. Electronic ignition was not come on until later 1200 RPM. And then it was good for the rest of the day. 1200 RPM. First flight every morning. Yeah. What? I said, you know what? Disconnect yourself from the switch. See what happens. If the electronic ignition only talks to the start. It's funny, but that works. What's going on? Seattle, Washington. March, April, May. High humidity climate. Not either here. What's that? It is not even what? Terrible. Well, he had a little bit of no humidity. No humidity? I mean, it's very low. He's very tough. You get a liar. Well, the moisture in the air, and the only thing that we can conjecture is that the moisture in the air, if the airplane sat overnight, will stick in when you're off. These contacts are now closed. Enough corrosion building up overnight. That airplane, when it hit whatever frequency it was, 1200 RPM, those contacts went ding, moved it right up. All problems can be able to teach them. It's the only thing I can think of.
How hard is it to train the novice? Because you know, right? But how hard is it to train the novice mechanic install?
The system is designed to be installed by company. But what you would consider a good company. My experience, you've got a range. It's been that way very unlimited. It's true this on the old friend of mine. He's an engineer, and so you never know how big the product is. Clients start finding it. Installation. This system is only as good as it is installed correctly. To that end, try to make the installation manual as good as possible. The other issue, because it is, we've got components that get mounted all over the place. We also give you a lot of latitude to be able to install your big sensor here. At a train line, which is very long, you have to find it here for about 50 years on the opposite. Love your installation manual. I hate your installation manual. Love your installation manual. And I can now put this on the firewall where I know I've got space. If I were to sit there and dictate, being 6 inches over from the right, 4 inches down, chances are in these airplanes, something more. That's the very same question. So shouldn't you be more specific about where you put stuff, where you locate stuff? Because it's pretty generic. You tell them the FAA is saying it's 10, and it's 10. So I'm dealing with essentially 1960 something instead of 2, then converted to an 03 system. To a 2012 thing. It's got an allocation. Those two airplanes are under the same temperature. Nobody here would look at this airplane and say the same airplane are even similar. In fact, they were right. That's the problem you run into in a system like this. Dealing with the legacy of airplane. So we had to be flexible in how we run this. And compromise was on-grade line space on firewall. So there is part 43. So now you're asking the question, how much training does it take to install? Perhaps that's where I go to read it back and I look at it goes down. You should put a whole lot of training. These are technicians, that's what you it's really very straightforward. We've all been exposed to it. I certainly learned my life. To that end, we developed a program called Installation Center where Roslyn's start to recruit shops that are doing work application process. And it's not for application. I made it 50 questions. Frankly, I made it. Yes, and then we go through training, we get them up on the list. That's helped out. We will also start to sort of probably some information to see that. They have a way in our installation center to communicate with the training. Whether you know, drop up the mission, so we can access and look into the teeth. Brand new way from the factory. We don't have one of them. Shop in Texas that can't. The interesting thing about that is some other things that the learns fly out there. Like that, I don't know. I made that in 2018. We made that engine plate. And we did a stock 140. Did it by taking away out. So you gotta be cognizant by the operate that engine. He doesn't want to ruin it, so I would say about their that's all stuff that we can learn within our biblical solution center. That's the requirement that would be in small item solution center. No. We give the STT. It's a good idea. And for fathers, how can I get there? They're fine. It's a smart book. And the main thing is it's going to what's that? Yeah. Yes. What is the wiring issue? Hardwood wires were initially, it is actually the smart code itself. One of our distributed video, some people out of some of this stuff. No one owns that shop. Boy, I heard him. I didn't even have to get a photo of it. I heard him cursing before texting. That little wood rock gets so big, people up there. Daryl went out there and showed him this technique for about 15 minutes. And they had the whole thing going. And that's, again, the kind of stuff that you always, if you allow the product together, then it's good. Your comment to it all, it looks simple. Another thing, where I've been out at the training session for the week. We were explaining to get some components and how to install it. They had some struggles occasionally in some of the installation. I'm walking through with the technician. The guy's name is Chris. What they finally ended up deciding was that the staff of about 45 techs. So specialized two of them installing. That way we figured it. Since I'm going through the class with the other guys, pretty explaining something. Chris would interrupt and say like that. Oh, this is not a magneto. Do not think it's a magneto. It took me 3 weeks to finally figure out that this is not a magneto. And again, it's all of those things that we learned and that we're stuck with as we maintain airplanes. There have been no new systems put on these engines. This is what we have. And you have a really entirely brand new system as far as what's being exposed to what goes on with the thing. And everything is certified out. It's amazing what you can get out of these engines performance-wise, you know. But yet we have to be cognizant. This is new aviation, and we got to take the time to read the manual and understand it. Oh, that's the question about policy.
No, I was just looking at it as a plural.
More than you wanted to know. What else can I answer to it?
The 152 you were talking about, you said it was timed at 25 degrees.
I believe it was.
Was it one with my Sparrowhawk conversion? Because the 152 is timed at 20. Stop.
Well, it was okay. I'm trying to reach back and remember. It was timed at whatever they put the engine to whatever the placard timing was.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. 235 is actually 20 degrees before top dead center. Rotated the engine 20 degrees before top dead center. Installed.
Mm-hmm. Where was this?
I'd rather not say.
No, I'm just curious if I own the Sparrowhawk STC. I developed it.
I don't think they had your STC.
Okay, because I had a guy in
This is a
Virginia.
really big flight school, which means you're cheap. This is a really big flight school.
Oh, okay, so it's a flight school. Okay. I had a guy in Virginia that he's got like $140,000 in the 152. I'm serious. This is this is bizarre. Okay, he totally disassembled, refurbished the airplane, put it back together. We had Lycon build his engine, every trick they know to do to it. Dyno that this is a 125 horsepower, 9.7 to 1 compression engine. They dynoed that thing at
235.
0235 L2C modified with SE792NW. Okay,
JPA.
The same as the J2A or F2B. So anyway, they built this thing up. They dynoed it at 145 horsepower. That's at 2,800 RPM, which is the red line on the one Sparrow.
That whole 152 cars getting strapped.
Now, the 152.
Yeah.
He's got a stow kit. He's got the big droop wingtips. He's got 800 tires on it. He's got a 606 nose tire. Gap seals. Everything that he can do to this thing. It's painted camouflage. Put this engine in it. Got a climb pitch propeller. And when he got the thing done, he rolled it into the avionics shop and put an entire glass cockpit in it. So then he gets it out and starts flying the thing. and he's over temping like crazy. It sounded similar to the story you were telling. There's a reason I asked. I thought it might be the same guy.
No.
Lycon built 3 carburetors up for him, sent them out. They sent him there, flow him, get him as rich as they could, and he was still having the problems and everything with it. And I worked with him. He sent me all the photographs of his baffling and everything. I checked it, you know, everything was just really very precision. I mean, it was just right. It was just that this thing was nothing like I ever test flew. You know, I had Ito talk to me about wanting to put one on floats, and I said, no, I won't participate. I said, I didn't test that. I said, as far as I'm concerned, you put the extra drag on that thing, you're going to smoke that engine.
Right. Yeah, right.
I don't want to be responsible. I mean, all I ever tested was a stock airplane. So anyway, that's why I was wondering, you know, what the thing was, because you get the 9.7 to 1. I mean, you're running right on the ragged edge of pre-ignition detonation.
And he, obviously, this airplane was an experimental.
No. Fully certified.
Really?
Yes. This guy's in the oil fracking business. And he wanted something to get in and out of the backwoods strips and stuff. And he don't like helicopters.
Grabbing the airplane and thinking about the slow competition that happens in May, Alaska. There are some airplanes that go up there that are purpose-built for that competition. This sure it sounds like the same kind of calculator. But he had it all, he was able to maintain it all in standard category.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, darn.
There's STCs for everything he's got. It's just you start stacking those STCs. You don't want to you're running.
Well, and as you well know, being an STC holder, you're supposed to evaluate all those STC. Many can practically.
No.
Make sure they work.
No. I got a great big disclaimer in my authorization that says it is up to the approving authority to determine if there's any other modification to this aircraft that will possibly be detrimental combined with this STC.
That's actually in the form.
Well, it is ultimately FBI. I mean, here.
Yes.
Yeah, but they still wanted us. I mean, we did. We evaluated. Well, also exhaustive. In fact, on our test airplane, which was a Cardinal, those 360 had a powerful exhaust system on it. We were still sucking on craft for some reason, and more power. One story about the Cardinal. That beach, the best one. Our Cardinal lives on a 2,000-foot craft strip. South end, 80-foot trees. North end, hollow end, big old oak trees. Guys flew the Cardinal out of there forever. Oh, by the way, wheelchair. Love riding that. Only put 3. So we put this thing in the airplane. Well, you ready to go fly? I'm looking around. He's no, I'm looking at you. Your ignition system. You're ready to go fly? Yeah, sure. Nothing. We got in the north end of the runway and do a power turn. Take off into the south. Grass hadn't been mowed, all that recently either. We take off, and mind you, I've never been in an airplane, never been out of the circle. We take off, we start climbing through the trees and whatnot. It's like, wow, that was a kick in the seat of the pants. He said, we rotated easily 100, 150 feet earlier than I normally would in this airplane. And I said, wow, where you normally rotate and everything else. Yeah, bullshit. You're looking at the trees, weren't you? I didn't believe us being the trees. It is fun flying. It had the Cardinal had the powerful exhaust system. And we did. We started off fully with gallon per hour fuel savings on that engine.
Why the manifold pressure hookup?
That's how you do a variable timing.
On manifold.
Based upon manifold pressure. Actually, thank you. It's a great question. Because it's one of the things that gets confused about our electronic ignition system quite a bit, especially when we start talking about accelerated temps and those sorts of things. The discussion runs, well, if you advance the timing too much, if you advance the timing in the wrong spot, you're going to create a lot more. That's an absolutely true statement. Totally true. If you think about quarter mile hot rockets and stuff like that, they're fiddling with that timing. High manifold pressure. It will get some more oomph out of that engine. You'll also get a lot more heat. Our timing curve, the timing curve that we use, manifold pressure sensor, is a very conservative timing curve to avoid that very problem. So when you're at high power, take off center, where manifold pressure is above 24 inches, the manifold, we are not doing any adjustment. When your 0360 is a 25 degree motor, you're wide open throttle, making about 27, 28 inches of power. You're 25 degrees before top of sun. Until the manifold pressure comes down below 24 inches. Starting at 24 inches and down, we're staying at stop timing. It's a temperature concerns. Our evaluation actually showed that you would get some benefit when you start. But to put a factor of safety in there, we stepped it down.
You're not making.
You'd be advanced.
That's your point.
And it's good. You want to say, if you're taking so 7,000 or 8,000 feet in the airports, it will advance a total of actually 15 degrees before top of the center. If it's a linear curve, it's 2 degrees of advance for every inch of manifold pressure below 24 inches. So at 24 inches, we're firing at 25 degrees before top of the center. 23 inches, we're firing at 27 degrees before top of the center. 22 inches, 29 degrees, and so on. It tops out around 38, 39 degrees. It's also why you notice a much smoother rated engine on the ground. Setting it high, manifold pressure is really, really low. Really advanced. We're up to 37, 38 degrees before top of the center. That's what squeezes out that whole engine. The purpose of the spark ignition of advancing ignition temperature is to give that combustion charge, that fuel ignition charge, the correct amount of time it needs to develop peak pressure. So the peak pressure will vary between 10 and 17 degrees after top of the sun. Think about it, it's distance coming up, compress, spark, in your combust, those pressures are starting to build toward the top. And about my favorite number is 11, but it varies a little bit. Somewhere within 10 to 17 degrees after top of the center, you develop peak pressure. Now we've got the most efficient part to apply force now in the piston of the right crank. If we leave the timing fixed to 25 degrees before top of the center, as we go up, the air gets thinner. Those fuel air molecules inside of that combustion chamber, they get further apart. It takes longer for them to combust and develop peak pressure. So if you're firing, something's got to give. So if you're firing all at the same time, 25 degrees before top of the center, the peak pressure instead of occurring here, occurs further and further down the throat of the system. As you go up in altitude in the conventional airplane, the 2 torpedoes, it's power faster. That's why. Same thing on the ground. If we're really low height, really low manifold pressure, it's going to take time for that fuel index to combust and develop peak pressure. So bring it, advance it, bring that pressure point back to where it belongs on the engine. That's, if you go to the sweet spot, the engine speed up.
So when you start the airplane, you fire on both settings, this system. But as you start it, it starts out thinking that manifold pressure is 29.92.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. That's the part that we deal with electronically. Okay? During starting, from 0 to about 50, 60 RPM, we're not doing anything at all. Looking at RPM, we're not going to do anything at all. The reason for that is we've got to get over, if you look at the acceleration curve at the end, it's starting to have to crank around. That acceleration curve is nuts. It's bouncing. What's happening is the trigger wheels, it's going back and forth. I'm exaggerating about this, so it's going back and forth. If that were to happen in normal flight, the system will shut off because it's going to say, wait a minute, the engine can't go backwards. I just lost my count. So from that range, in that RPM range, the low RPM range, we're not going to do anything. At about 50 or 60 RPM, electronically we set the ignition temperature to 0 degrees before top of the sun. We begin firing at 0 degrees before top of the sun to about 250. 250 RPM, we step to 7 degrees before top of the sun. We immediately work our way up to 25 degrees before top of the sun, getting there at about 400 RPM. If you have a manifold pressure sensor attached, that's extra time on top of that, which you get to that float. So big chunks of that time frame during that start sequence.
Oh, right.
The code just locks out. And that all happens, obviously, before the code. And you're starting to figure in about 200 to 250.
Pressure sensor will be what the sensor.
It is, yeah. This setting can, what we take them up in the automotive world use a lot more sensors, and you can't do that. Can't do it. Sort of superficial. Strongly, think about cars. We're looking when you turn the wheel in the car, the load on the engine's cheap, the transmission's cheap, all those sorts of things. They're much more costly than I find.
That sensor because it just shows efficiency.
Right, they go back to 25 degrees.
The only thing that's nice is the nonsense. You know, it's, if you got a person that's gaining it, that situation would be nice to help. That's what we understand. It's computer control, you can have that.
Well, then, yeah, did everybody hear that? What would be nice to have in these engines would be a non-sensor, and in particular in 6-cylinder. We're actually looking. The system has the ability in a conventional car application to do with a non-sensor. Non-sensor is nothing more than a microphone. It's paid. The system is going to look at that noise, and as soon as it gets a noise that falls outside of the range, it has the ability to retard the timing to make them not. So does that. What signal do you need to put out? That ends up becoming very engine specific.
Right, well, the fading system, you know, that has the ability to pick up some computers, which system faded.
Before it's very specific.
Yeah, it's very specific.
Very specific engine. Then also a channel that holds the microphones in the back of the engine. So
And it's taken the automotive industry years to work with it, because they had GM that had tons of problems. You know, they were in, all of a sudden there'd be a, like, what we call a silent recall, and there'd be a service call. Came in, if you complained about it, we fixed it. If you didn't complain about it, just, I didn't not say a word. It's cheaper for the manufacturer, but Jeff Motors did that. By the time it fell over that. Where you get a sensor and they tell you to move it from this ball, this location to this location. And now we're looking at the problem. Or if the guy had a 2-volt motor mount, hit the side of the block, it would make it.
oh gosh, that changed so much.
So then they'd have to change 1 bolt. You'd say, what the hell does that have to do with it? That was what they found. Is the software in the controller upgradable, or is it pretty well fixed?
It's fixed. It's been the same. Since the early 2000s, right?
So if you develop a knock sensor, wouldn't be backward compatible.
It actually, yeah, it's in the controllers that we have now. The portion of it is not connected to anything. It's just there. So yes, that's correct. Any consideration on talking with GPA and solve You know, I've talked to JPI about it actually. Everybody heard the question. It's sort of come around with one unified full pressure sensor. The problem with our system is that when we look at manifold pressure through the whole range. What I'm really worried about from 2014 and below, after that, both the trails, it's a fixed time. If it's responding, even at low and most reaches a certain point, it's going to flex itself out. So yes and no, it turned into a little bit more of a complicated conversation. And I've got great, I like the guys at JPI, but they've been very supportive of us using their equipment. It's just enough different object, right? With all this stuff.
There is one item that that was that's it. You have to realize that.
Right. So I should thought like yeah, that is something. I think that's a fairly common. It was. Yeah, it was. Our system, I've talked to Horizon Tech. I've talked to Horizon 2 or 3 times. Gentleman told me which one was still alive. Politely told me found it. Al that took over afterwards. Their engineer, we've been kind of back and forth on it, but I think they've certainly been. There are electronic techs out there that
Your tech, yeah, like tech.
Totally happy with it, yeah.
Just a little bit.
sorry?
Just a little bit of the price.
Say about gas and relax. That's where Roscoe's on. Retail price on the 4-cylinder system is $35,000. Let's see that changing. Just street, I'll give you a 10% discount. See to it, it's a 10%. What's the system? 6-cylinder is 5,500. Same thing. See to it that you get 10%.
How much time is on your bag? I think they were talking. Oh, they're ID. Okay. I was gonna say it. It ain't got touching data. When I did it on my airplane, we knew we were going to do the engine coming up in the following year. It's been 2,200 hours since the last time it took them all. And it made the perfect time to get rid of the magneto. So I wasn't throwing away the magneto. It was done. But, so I believe all of my yeah, I think I would be any groups. It just makes sense at that point because what's the name these days? And you got to inspect it every 500 hours, possibly replace some expensive plastic heaters.
I said there's no inspection requirement for your system. Just connections. You know, which really look like everybody. And that guy, spark plug wires, there is a replacement item for spark plug wires, which actually with regular you would have to change it, all the stuff with data. It's 5 years on the change, so we had all that.
Big installation is the same as every other. It's the mechanic isolating the wires. Stuff against vibrating, or you mounting the units in a place where heat is not affecting. So those both things you have to consider when you install. So if the installation is done correctly, all of that is a non-issue. It's not done correctly, it can be a nightmare. Smoky work. It worked great. The other one was an absolute nightmare, and he wasn't happy. They wasn't happy. No. And in the end, I honestly don't think it had anything to do with the electronic condition system. It more of a tool to internal wiring here, but it still used the ignition structure.
That's weird.
No, weird. And I don't know. I haven't talked to Doug about it yet, because I don't know. I don't know whether he's been good or bad together. But he's faulted it. But there were other things that his panel, in fact, his aircraft, there wasn't a quarter of an inch from run of wire behind his panel. There is so much crap behind his panel. It is solid from one end to the other. And putting the wiring just getting the ignition switches for 3 hours. It was unbelievable. When he said change the harness, I thought Bill was gonna shoot himself in the head. It's like, are you kidding me?
It was that bad. I mean, yeah, you could angle and harness and test it, but when you actually wanted to install it and get it in place with the controller, the only place to put the controller was the little spot on the firewall that you had.
Yeah.
Three things to get to. So every installation becomes different.
Yeah, that's why I lost it.
Really important.
Better.
Yeah, that's all I.
Better for us.
The aircraft itself has wiring issues, no matter what you do.
But my neighbors took one out of their PA-28 scattered it. Didn't make it work.
We switched this week and I just rolled out. I was going to ask her, you said you needed 2 amps, you needed 8 amps, 10 amps. One has to be for the other. You can't fix that. We don't have to switch anything. 10 amp side is straight for bus, so as soon as you're avionics bus, you're not hot. Okay. I say, but we look at those individual switches. We start on both because both the mag and is retarded. So when he ignition, we're both in zero. We check them. We learn to check left mag first, and then back on. Then the ignition system does. If you check the right mag, the ignition system first, and you're a little too quick going with the left one, you're back in the same situation because the right hasn't caught up yet after you turn it on for 2 reps. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because we had that with the another flight school. And, well, in fact, they were flying Archer, so they weren't even using this. They were using the rocker switches that are in the eyebrows of the flight machine. And you had the students shut one off, and then they would do this. Simultaneously. And we missed. Bring it back, and they were just walking. Sandy went out there with him and said, well, let's do this, right? To be honest, she's at home.
Well, it's similar to the out of Verizon tack. It's not too fast, but tack that you got to reset the tack. It has the same thing. It takes time for it to relearn. And so if you go from you do left, then right back and then right, tack will show it. Start right home. I love it.
Now, I've got one customer with an AG5B. He has a power flow, and he's got a leaky carburetor because when he's idling, it's black smoke. But when he goes to shut down, when the first time we tried to shut down the electronic, he pulls the mixture all the way out. He goes, oh. Because the carburetor is just about fuel, and it will fire an extremely lean mixture. So I said, I don't like that. I said, okay, so before you pull the mixture out, turn off the carburetor switch, turns off the electronic, pulls it back, and shuts right down. We got instances where there's no power in the circuit. Going back and forth. Oh, it's fuel injecting the engine. Yeah. But it's also your third fuel pump in an emergency on our aircraft. If your electric goes out, your mechanical goes out, you've got to get fuel. Grab that primer and just try it like crazy.
So it's the primer. It's a working system.
Right.
I have an aircraft I work on that's jumping in Iron Hole, and he flies out of Greenville Lake Airport, which is flying into a mountain, and he lost his engine on takeoff. So, he's the thing all the way around the pattern.
It won't run good, and your hand will be tired when you're all done, but just keep pumping away.
That's okay. There's plenty of adrenaline. That's right. Deal with it later. Start this work. Start. So what do you? All right. So now you got an ignition key that's needed half. No, it's literally what the keys now. It says since I don't have an ignition key in the airplane, and they have the work key, is that one of these days I'm going to leave that in baggage. It's a cut off purpose taking it with you.
Right. And Joe Campbell, who has the system, he goes, how do I stop somebody from stealing my airplane now without an ignition key? I go, Joe, if they want to steal your airplane, they're just going to pop your talon and cut your mag wires and take your airplane anyway.
Don't tell anybody that.
Jersey
Plane's supposed to have 2 keys. Two keys. Baggage.
Yeah. No, we're not, I'm probably not gonna put the white outline.
Yeah, he did this.
I never did like that white outline anyway. I'm probably just gonna make them without it.
The only thing I don't care for about it is the next. It's just, you mentioned that.
He remembers, Jimmy, I told you.
I really love to see those.
I'll give you a little funny story about the ignition switch panel. Yeah, this is an SDC part, right? 90% of our aircraft don't see it, so 51. Both of them, in fact, both of them are SDC part. I gotta be honest, I don't think we need to be SDC. I think under part 43, I think that changed. Signing off together. Two funny stories about state we're at with the FAA. I've got, that's like the original office. Oh, yeah.
This is like the original panel was like. Not bad.
Not
Yeah, like it, which is why I.
Mine is just like that. I've seen some of it.
Yeah. So what we do is, we didn't want to move all of this, and the original one was like, something with wild rays, no place to put it. So we lay that pattern on that chipboard out, drill the 4 corner holes, blow house out, so we could drop it. Then when we just regular laser knife, we cut this out, then we cut the plastic underneath and put out this there sub cabinet, mounted that with the little switch cards, right on the built-in star washers and nuts, and then you have 2 switches, just like a twin.
And it flushes out.
Oh, it's flush.
Yeah. That's a chant, something like that. I always tell people this is the way airplanes are supposed to be operated. I cannot tell you how many times that my dad, he and I had a 150, World War II guy, navigator. He said it's just B-20. He and I go flying. Strapped in, we had 4 point for us. He said, there you go. He's got the key. It's not a fail finger box.
Been there, done that.
I didn't go there.
Yeah, I know.
Switch panel again, from a philosophical standpoint, I don't think it needs to get SDC. But I will tell you that meetings with the FAA, they agreed. I had 4 engineers there. I said, I don't think it needs to be SDC. The electrical guy said, no, I don't think it does either. But boy, I'm glad you did. It saved us a lot of headache. A lot of discussion with this. The other thing with regards to this kind of state of where we're at, and sharing this with you so that we can be somewhat sympathetic to. We're going through the change to add horizontal version of switch panel. In the meeting, again, I've got 4 FAA engineers sitting in this meeting. One of them's been around. It's been around general aviation. They know 3. I'm not. Julian, my engineer, is explaining how switch panel works and everything. I just watch all his eyes come through. And I stop and say, excuse me. Would it be helpful if I walk through how I'm making the operates? What its purpose is? That's what I said, boy, that really helped me out. You've got a lot of young people coming in within the FAA. And they're coming out of Boeing. In fact, my primary engineer, I'm consulting with Boeing. So, her general aviation experience is continues in 2 hours. She did at Iowa State University. She's become big service. The electrical guy, he comes out of Hong Kong. He does. So, it's a little bit of facing. So, you guys work at it. We actually have a lot more knowledge than hopefully. My hope is that we're seeing a pendulum swing back to where it was the IAs out the field and decisions that are
I see your update.
when I made the question, he sat back in his chair across the smiled and just yeah.
Question, is that unit available as a standalone without the electronic system?
The switch panel?
Yeah.
No. It is currently only certified to be used with magneto and electronic system. However, you're not the first person that was asking your question. Let's put them together for two.
Okay. I'm going to say I know of quite a number of people that they just got the two toggle switches in there. I've done it myself.
Sure.
Okay, do it on a minor alteration, and fine. You get rid of the mag switch. You got the starter button.
If somebody
Ready to go.
wants that, and they don't want the business, they can call it their responsibility. They just have to follow that. So since you own STC, as you know this pretty well, it's regulated STC, always make minor changes. And it's a great provision of the regulations because it allows the manufacturer to make a minor change. So it needs to be fixed, fix it, and move on. I know the philosophy that you run freight trains for the season. You gotta tell them about it, but for the most part, of course, at this stage of my career, I'm also willing to go to the snows and too. We're going to do a magneto switch panel based on a minor change right under that same STC. Just call it a model. Just call it a thing.
Yeah, just be a lot easier to put up one and drop it in than to peel one.
And I've been very, very pleasantly surprised with how well received this particular part of their system is received. It's well, for the people that have the $300 option with the ones that have the $100 inspection, and then they have to replace.
Those are the ones with the key turn start,
Right.
with the push start.
Yeah, that's right.
It's AC tires.
Yeah,
AC tires, well, like,
It's not a fun
it's terrible. And, you know, I'm working at a fleet, we had issues with all of them.
I know part two are expensive.
Oh, yeah.
no, well, there's your benefit. There's two places in the world that are the parts suppliers for Grumman-Americans. That's Fletcher and me. Okay, and the phone calls that I get from being technical director for the GPA and having been one of the original founders and newsletter editor for many years of the AYA, in '79, Aviation Consumer dubbed me the Grumman Guru. It's stuck. So I get calls from all over the world. I'm talking about I may be woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning from South Africa or Australia or something. You know, these guys have no conception. And a lot of them is not that ignition switch. I'm having problems with it. Everything. It would be so nice to say, tell you what, just buy one of these, have your mechanic put it in, throw that thing in a big river or a little river, doesn't make much difference. And you're done with it.
Right in the backyard. Well, it's actually something I don't know if he's finished the minor change yet or not, but it's forthcoming.
Good.
That's for sure.
We could still need, even though this, still need this.
Oh, no.
The key anyway to put up on the third sheet, so it's like, what's your thank you?
I think you're right on. Just those back sections and that way.
Maybe put a little hook there.
What is the EIS?
Just have a flag you hang on the compass.
Okay. Still. This is for your mag checks.
Right.
Right, it's just, we can still need the two-way know-how. Well, it's through one of those two switches.
Think of the 10 amp controls the coil. That's what it's being is the coil. The 2 amp is control of the rest of the control. That's as simple as that. You operate the control as the master switch turns on the coil.
So that's solar to your system. Right. Yep, so it's one and the same. Yeah. So why is it 2 on that? One's for the magneto, one's for the
So when a magneto shuts down,
you bring that, replace it. Whatever. Just see you got switch and that. Like, oh, you want mark the right under the Yep. I got my numbers off the EI too.
And the difference is, when you're in a road position, the ignition was a closed switch. Like on the electronic ignition. On mag, it's an open switch. Mag goes to ground, so when you shut down, it closes that switch, and grounds down. So the one switch.
Any other questions?
Still get one pump.
What's that?
They still get one pump.
One hot bag?
Yes, if you have a wire mag, right, it doesn't change. You still get it, your left mag goes still with fire.
There is one other thing that I don't remember if we mentioned. The spark plugs that you run on that super different spark plug.
Oh, yes.
Very important. Ask the guy who brought it to the spark plug, the spark plug, still not making it off the ground.
Something else we got. Well, I mentioned it, so these are both BY plugs. Yeah. I'm sure about it was wrong about it. They both have the same application. Tempest champion.
Camping being short.
Well, anyway, with the electronic ignition system, your magneto systems right now, you're going to get typically about 16,000, 16 to 19,000, depends on the name. With our system, you're going to get anywhere between 28 and 35,000. We have these, I think, set at 42 to 35,000. Here to buy, but that helps you with your hot starting fire system. It is, our rules can be traced back to John March. Is there any preference for the fine wire? No, and that's a good question. I get asked the question, is there a benefit of using fine wire plugs versus massive electric plugs? From a purely ignition system guy standpoint, the spark plug is kind of a dumb fight. It's a pathway for voltage to come to God. What I will tell you is let your engine do the talking as far as whether you use a massive spark plug or a fine wire spark. In other words, there are some engines that have more of a capacity to put deposits on the spark plug. Those engines generally run better on fine wire spark plugs. There's a huge thing in beach road, 520s and 550s. So fine wire is the best. So the two tech guys from ABS, they say no, we prefer massives. I will tell you there are some 550 engines that just do better on fine wire spark plugs. Like Grumman IO 360 L2A was common in 72. With our system, that does better on fine wire plugs. Not exactly sure why, but the plugs last longer than fine wire in that particular engine. Other engines, it just doesn't seem that.
If you have a HIL 360 slicer, it mandates a plus these flat wire. If it's no see the bicycle.
Now that you could actually, what we do is we put a dash 23 switch on the left so that opening up your, don't connect to that terminal so it leaves it all ungrounded, push down the ground. The other side, like 12 volts of electrical to the control. However, you could put two gas 23s in there and you could just have both big guys without unground and grab both of your bags. That was an incision on just keeping the key. Right, because when I was doing that, I was kind of flip-flopping. Was I going to use the label that came with the switch, and if you flipped it over, then it doesn't look right. Right. So, yeah, Mark did it that way. But we originally did Mark's airplane. We left the key in and put a Carlin switch in next to it. Then we ran into a copy that was off. The part was, well, I don't like that. We're trying to get it. That stuff. But
I like it at night because it's just a big plate.
Good. Well, mate.
Yes.
Yeah. Position last week. Yeah. I don't know. For sure. I know the spark plugs, wire spark plugs, so wires just the top, just the bottom, or the plug. It's a great question. And again, I'll go back to the perspective of an ignition system guy standpoint. whether we fire a top spark plug or bottom plugs, doesn't matter to us. I will tell you that this is also, in fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to tie another point into it as well about this being a base to spark system. So when we're firing on the spark plug that's in compression, we're firing on the corresponding spark plug that's in exhaust. The reason for doing this is really for completing the circuit and coil. But what's that?
Makes electronics easy.
Yeah, it makes electronics easy. But the up benefit to it is if anything built up on that on the spark plug that's in exhaust, like carbon, lead, or whatever, you fire high energy across it, it's turned off, it's up to exhaust valve is open, there's no pressure in the cylinder, it's going to burn the fire. It's really where we begin to get 100,000 mile spark plug in that way. It's a high energy waste coil system. And that when spark is off it, the pressure point. Yeah. Definitely. So there's no point in rotating. There's no issue in rotating. So now to your question, you put it on all the time to all top. Bottom place fall first. There you go. That's my point. Put this on all the bottom. There's plenty of spark plugs all over. My comment to you though would be look at the magneto that you're leaving behind. Make sure that harness you can all the top plugs before you do it. Because if it doesn't work, I don't know that I was bothered because now you got to order a half harness. And I remember when I was a switch distributor, that was to get a half harness to get a med. It's like now. But yeah, if you can write it down, certainly. There's no, the other thing, and this is actually an open question, asked any reason why we do 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. I'm looking not for, if we've always done it that way, but for an actual engineering document that says you should do it that way. Never run across it. My guess is that whole reason has been lost to the actual report that everything from the engineering profession. That's great, but that doesn't help me. That's the aim. Have to have an actual report. Yeah. Everybody can sign it. If anybody runs across it, please share it.
Well, do you remember when the Piper Tomahawk came out, and the L2C engine came out with the same time we had them in the 1C, AA1Cs, the 152s, and then the Tomahawks and the beat skippers. Well, Tomahawk, flight schools were having so much problem. They were sending, with lead fouling, they were sending students on cross countries with an extra set of bottom plugs and plug wrenches to teach them how to change plugs because they were going to get grounded somewhere and have to do this. And so anyway, yeah, then the 37BYs came out. And but anyway, Piper came out with a rewire for the Tomahawk, the service letter, their service instruction, that it was an option to wire one mag to all the top plugs, the other mag to all the bottom plugs. So that if you got this problem, you just shut one mag off, the engine would run smooth. Yeah. So I don't know where the documentation would be, if that would be of help or anything.
I don't know. I mean, being fired at a number of places, and when you start to talk to an engineer, either like them or not, you ask them what you're after, they go, yeah, I now know what you need. I have no idea where I would find it. Just no idea.
I remember reading something where it said you can do it either way. It was like homing or engine. Basically, either way. You can either alternate up, down, or top.
Right. I think that may go through all light plumbing engines. I think it could have been a light plumbing service instruction. But I know the Tomahawks were pushing it.
Yeah, it's actually known as trauma. The BY plug actually addressed. I'll tell you why Auburn spark plugs failed. Their marketing, because they never came up. They had a BY plug on the drawings, they never produced it. Put the LPC entrance into the flight school, oil valve onto it. The fix was to go with the BY extended plugs. Took Auburn spark plugs, which required the AC spark plug plugs. Took them right out.
Now, on my STC, SE792NW, it specifically says in the STC, do not use the REM37BY plugs. Here's the reason. I got the first set of them, and I'm sitting there looking at them, and I'm looking. See, the 9.7 to 1 compression pistons are 1/8 of an inch taller than the original pistons. And so I had my own airplane with Yankee. It had an original Lycoming F2B in it. That was my prototype that was built as a 125. And so I put a set of these plugs in it and pulled the prop through. Pulled the plugs out. And I had a little bit of carbon on 2 plugs. Now, it depends on how the helicoil was indexed in there when that thing torques down, whether the plug's like this or like this. If it's like this, it ain't going to hit. It's like this, it's possible. Now, things stretch a little bit when you get that thing to 2,800 RPMs or above.
Yep.
So anyway, I had some problems with them jamming the plug shut. So that's when I wrote the multiple STC for it. So I just had a one-time STC then, and I wrote the multiple STC and wrote that in it. Now, that was in 1978, I think, that I got that STC, and it's never been changed. Now, I know an awful lot of people that are running them in the 152s, Tomahawks, they're not having any problems with it.
Well,
So-
you might be right about the helicoil just being compared.
Yeah, and so people read that and they say, well, I've got RBM37BY plugs in here. Well, if you go strictly to follow the STC, it says not to use it. I have not amended it. I really don't want to open that kettle of worms with the FAA because I absolutely have to get that removed because everyone will go, know why. And but anyway, so I tell them, okay, fine. Run them. If you don't have any problem, don't worry about it. You know, some IA is probably going to come on and say, hey, wait a minute, this don't meet the STC. Okay, deal with it then. But,
I think the Twin Comanche, one of the versions of the Twin Comanche, 360, you don't have enough space to run it.
Yeah.
And Lycoming, correct me if I'm wrong here, they used to say that you like plugs. Your 235s and 320s, you get full horsepower just by having the other electrics stuck out.
yeah. Well, at Ken Tunnel at Lycon, they use the 37BYs in every engine they put out. Well, he shipped out, you know, quite a number of my Sparrowhawk engines for 152s and Tomahawks and stuff. They'll build them up, exchange, ship them back out. I've sent them a lot of them. And got a guy in Montana that ran into this, and his IA said, hey, wait a minute, you know, you don't have the right spark plugs in here. Well, those are the ones that came back in the engine that Kenny built. So and Kenny says, no. He says, we put them in everything. And I said, well, I got this problem. I said, read the STC.
Yeah.
And so he reads it, and he said, well, I don't know. He said, we get so much better luck with the extended plugs that we put them in everything. And I said, well, you know,
More horsepower, right?
well,
And 4 cylinders.
well, of course, Kenny, you know Kenny, I'm sure.
Sure.
He's going to squeeze every toenail of the horsepower that he can out of those things. And
One of the scans in your engine.
I never have, no. He's offered to build me an engine for my own airplane, promised I'd never sell it. If I promised I would never sell it. One of these days, if I get around to rebuilding that, you're putting that Yankee back together, I'm going to have you build one. But
He does trick that stuff.
oh yeah, but they built probably at least 150 engines for me since 1988 when I started using them exclusively, and yeah, Kenny's got his own way of thinking about things. Now that brings up another question. I've talked to him about the electronic ignition, and he seems to be a little bit squirrely about it.
Yeah, it's funny because he used to buy a lot of our ignition systems. Jeff owned the business, and it was one of his big stuff.
Oh.
And in fact, I think on his test cell, he still has one of our first generation systems. But that predates a lot of the stuff that he's done with the we had a glass air actually that had Kenny's good preferred special engines.
Mhm.
You know, this guy gets to a certain RPM, at a certain point, gets you to feel it, the airplane feel it's coming by. He made a couple of emergency manuals. He always came back to the electronic tickets. He dialed it, he had a dual system on there, everything. He set him firewire code, he timed it, the whole gut. Turned out fuel circle had a flaw. And it's just enough of it. Put the two magnetos on it. And then this gentleman and I, we get to a point where we said, you know, we're starting to call each other names. Time to be done. Send it back. I said, he sent me a text and he said, like, I owe you an apology. He said, fuel circle had a flaw. I said, didn't believe it. I had Kenny in the airplane with me. Making a pattern. Two magnetos on it. The thing did it again. We had to spin. Kenny pointed out, that's string. Sure enough, that thing broke. With two magnetos. Not like that.
So
One of the
yes,
issues I have with Kenny, and we've touched on it, I'd like to see him do some more rigorous flight testing with an electronic ignition system married to all of these components. So he's doing some stuff with materials, also shapes and loads and cams, shapes and pistons, all kinds of things. I mean, he's got the engineering company that he's working with. He's got some very, very clever, neat guys that think about a lot of things. But they've done all this with two magnetos. And now if they put, there'll be some parameters changed, that's the ignition system. Once they put a high energy ignition system.
Yeah.
They just haven't done it.
so that's really made up more in his experimental engines, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because they couldn't really deal with it. Like I say, he told me he'd build an engine for me that would, 0235 that would dyno 175 horsepower. But he guaranteed me I'd have to get you and never sell it.
Well, when we did March, we left electronic fire. We just replaced the right bag and ran the harness just like it was. Right. The second one I did, I ran it the same way. 45 hours later, we had an oil change. His mechanic went into the engine and did an oil change. And when that oil change, he pulled all the spark plugs out, puts them in the little bag, cleans them, calls up the owner and goes, "What have you been doing?" 4 of these spark plugs, the gap has increased to almost 40,000. So he squeezes them off, then he takes them off. So I was walking the other end of the drink stuff. Oh, we're good? Yeah. All right. So he pushes the gap down to 16,000 on all the parts, rotates all the parts, puts it back in, fire the engine up. It's all you're running on one bag. Because at 16,000 the park, and I will tell you, we destroyed, 6 or 7 bloods before we caught on? Yeah, what was it toast any? Right. Well, I know. Still, we were hoping to get the hill spur to get the right blood. So what I started doing on the next month, I rotated the bag off the top bloods, electronic ignitions on all the bottom bloods. I was changing the parts, the color of the ignition marks, blue, yellow, be red down, with a placard on the firewall. Evil plugs on top, electronic ignition, bottom, do not rotate plugs. Because they are different, even though they look almost identical.
About half of them, it's service life.
37 feet long.
Yeah, it's considerably shorter. Now, running them on the bottom, I would probably pulling it more, cleaning it more. But it seems like replacing them a lot sooner. I run 3070 wise, I pop it on.
Right. Did you rotate the plugs?
No, because I kept it 70 wise, 30 watt.
That is important on a 2 meg ecosystem that you're following that rotation. Because the energy is still
Well, it's good if we got for the engine overall, I was getting a lot of like family.
sure.
So I had that problem today. And back then, that's why I still had a clutch 40 E's, so I could put them on top, 37% bottom.
Well, and they do work.
But that was what I noticed. It seemed like people sort of was fast.
I've had a lot of premature failures with the Champion REM 37 VYs. I'm talking about less than $100. They're gone. They're short. You know, they're resisted out. Not with the Tempest. The Tempest seemed to last. I think it's a much better plug. So I tell people don't even bother buying Champion. You know, just buy Tempest. Now the kid is using Tempest exclusively.
Didn't Champion just buy Tempest recently?
No.
But they did change their plug design.
Yes,
Tempest.
Champion bought Unison, which was slick, and Unison had bought AC, and Champion put AC out of production. And, you know, so there went the Unison version of the plug.
Back in the 80s, I had a shop in the motor industry.
It's good.
The standard failure rate for Champion sparkling is 40%. Now,
Good.
any shop that you never use Champions, you go to light series C's, you never would even consider using it.
I misspoke there. Actually, you know, Champion bought them, put them out of production, then they came out with Unison, and Unison then was sold off. The plugs were sold off to Air Accessories, which is Tempest, and they totally redesigned the spark plug.
The Aero Accessories did.
For whoever, I mean,
The difference between the reason Champion bought Auburn, which was AC originally, is that's what they do with the spark plugs for aircraft. They wanted the igniter.
right, exactly.
I used to be at Auburn ship, which was AC. Little piece of trivia too about AC spark plug. Anybody have any idea how long it took General Motors, AC, in the late 60s, early 70s, when they're still using a lot of round motor engines, to build the year's supply of aircraft spark plugs? A week. Anybody else got a guess? An hour. And I'm from Flint, Michigan. But I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, in Flint Township, on the other side of town. No lie. I'm the sales manager of the state. They would shut the production line down, retool it for aircraft, build the aircraft plugs, shut it down, retool it for automotive. 124 hours. Wow. Good for a year. And then good for your supply. To mind you, this is what we still have in the airline industry, not around conveyors and everything else. We're still using round motors.
He said twice.
Twice.
I got to see this thing stood out to the spot. Oh, you know, oh, dying. I do what that work there. So they're running the machine all night. See if it, you know, it's acceptable. This thing just, you didn't believe the spark plugs.
So it's sparkling.
The big problem was using the ceramics to the very interesting.
Now that's actually an interesting segment. That's the significant difference between Tempest and the Champion spark plugs. Tempest, with Unison on the center conductor and the ceramic fuse to it is incredible. It's a proprietary process that Honeywell uses and done for years. Champion had the center conductor that threaded into the ceramic. And I really think part of the problem, because Champion always make those spark plugs down the wood. They ain't longer one of the issues that you've seen with Champion, as a fellow manufacturer, I'll be sympathetic. They bought Slick and they moved it down to South Carolina. I guarantee you, the half dozen or dozen women that were probably in their 50s who were building slick magnetos in Rockford, Illinois for 40 years. They didn't go with the factory. And that's where you start. That's where you start with all the problems. It's all that tribal knowledge that gets ingrained into that they just said, yeah, see, I'm retired. And to duplicate that, replicate that, something. And the table. That is brand new table. I've heard stories of magnetos, random magneto out of the box. Guy pulls it off, shakes it, the front tread on the front in there. Pulls the cover off, just cuts out a bunch of faster to find something. That's always a challenge with question, but they worship.
I was wondering that they moved their coach down to Mexico. They paid him by the basket of floats. So they made for him 3 floats in the same ball. It's got paid. So you get them out. You get them out. One night they brought them over to the school artist. They were only using pounds at the time. And they brought a whole pallet of them. Said, okay, guys, take over court, see how many floats they get. Yeah, and we only have one partner there. They would flatten them out.
Well, I'm sure you know Joe is champion. Used to be good friend. You know him well. Man, I tell you, you get that guy going, he's going to unload. He's like a tape recorder with a play button and no stop.
He's a little firecracker.
I learned a lot just listening. I just sat back and listen. Okay, talk.
Champion has, in my understanding, Champion has gone to the fused center electrode on the strand, which actually was a design they used about 50 years. Since we're talking spark plugs, the Champion plugs, they were designed to be taken apart to be built. They have a spring and a plug in the back end of it.
Yeah. Oh, they used to.
Resistance is high. We clean that up. Does it make sense? No, we've possible work. We take it apart, pull out the little sludge. That's what some focus for. It's not the contact. It's not the contact. The
Resistor itself is
vary.
We used to, before the resistors would go bad, we would take them apart. We have 2 different size springs, but we've used all our harvested resistors. One would be high resistance. We put in a new resistor, the plug's good again. All I have left are the springs and the caps, because we can't get the resistors anymore because they've changed their design. And they wouldn't sell the resistors to you by themselves.
So you go through and you harvest them out of plugs that are burnt, but the resistor's still good.
Right.
I tried cleaning them. Probably if I'd done a dozen, I might have had one that came up back in.
So the moral of the story is, like, you look at the cost of spark plugs, you look at the labor cost of the guy that's cleaning, it almost pays to put these spark plugs in. It may sound a little interesting, but if you buy these spark plugs, you look at $200 some. If the guy spends over an hour working on it, you've already spent $100. So
That's something to give to the owner.
So, but the shop rate's still the same. You can get all the younger kids you want, but the shop rate's going to be the same for the shop. They're going to charge you for completing plugs.
Well, we've also been discussing. Okay, what about music?
They're fantastic.
In probably about 20% of our experimental applications are using them. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm an ignition guy, I'm not a spark plug. That spark plug is really a fairly dumb device relative to the rest of our ignition system. My comments about that, you want to make sure that you're using the right, now I'm talking experimental, right? You're using the right heat range for the engine. In case of the iPhone, there's a great auto lake tractor plug. It's 18 millimeters, the right heat range for the auto lake 386. That is only 2 as well, it's 18 millimeters. Some of the other experimental systems are using 14 millimeter spark plugs. You've got probably an adapter to put in the engine. That adapter changes the heat range of the spark plug. Does it transfer the heat? Is that spark plug going to be long?
Well, Rose used to sell the adapters.
What's that?
Rose used to sell.
Yeah, Jeff, I think, did used to sell them. But then he when we acquired it, he said, "Spread." So, Auto Link 386, nothing. Just use aircraft. The other thing for using an aircraft plug, the aircraft plug was designed for the aircraft engine. I actually did look at what it would take to improve an automotive spark. There's some neat automotive spark plugs. Well, that's enough capability. First of all, most of them don't use a gasket. They have a tape run on it and seal. They've got to overcome that. It's assumed from the moment that you overcome it. Minimum order. One spark plug manufacturer, which does just aftermarket spark plugs. They're not even in all. It's 2 million spark plugs. Jeez.
But sell it.
Is that worth doing? Well, how long will it take? Even if they're about fees, that's $2 million spark. So it just is not practical. There have been some discussions, I know, some forums getting experimental with using them on a plug on the forums and get this. Well, it's still a plug, and even this one guy, I mean, he's looking at just trying to save costs. On a brand new TSI 550 that he was putting on a velocity. What's the cheapest part of the airplane? Well, finally, I like that. And I said, the Grumman part. Sure. I said, how much money did you spend on that engine? Oh, yeah, I get your point. Just saying.
Well, it's so good.
I do eat.
You know, and the person that, you know, you spend all this money on an airplane, that's it, and you gotta push it to the last minute of the 50 hours. So, the oil change 4 times a year. They always have the accident for one. Well, and the oil's the cheapest thing. If you really look at it, water oil's cheaper than water. Yeah. What you pay for water is ridiculous. So, it's nothing. I mean, but they don't think anything of going out and buying lunch for $250 at the market.
Well, and again, some of the conversations with the owners in charging their funds. Top, 5 more. Utilize that airplane more. All those maintenance bills become spread with many more hours.
It's true. The war, we wouldn't have to get it before. So, and that's the fourth one for being here. Yes.
Yeah, he had a cylinder, went down here and pulled the thing off and looked in, and it was ugly on the cylinder. Yeah, oh no, so they have fell on the floor.
Okay, you know what? We can just be standing over the cylinder.
Well, you got it. Okay, he had a cylinder.
Listen, you got a spare always will give it to you.
Yeah. Okay, 10 hours ago, he had one cylinder that was 68, the rest of them,
15.
no,
15.
It's supposed to happen 15 hours.
15, okay. Anyway, so he flies it,
That's what I was thinking.
but it was leaking through the exhaust. So he flies it here. The guy wanted a compression checking on that cylinder within 10 hours. It would have been 15. So Roscoe pulls the thing in. Now it's at 50, but the leak is now in the rings.
For the rings.
And so, okay, now this ain't going to work. So pull it off, and 2 halves of the ring fall out. But it wasn't scored, so it must have just happened.
We have a serviceable cylinder. We were just going to go ahead and put the rings on his piston and then put the serviceable cylinder back on so we can get home. And then we pulled it, the rings fell off. We went, oh, this is bad. And then Jimmy looks up at the can and the cabin body. And we took some pictures.
I think it made Jimmy's day lifetime.
So anyway, his engine's going to be going to Lycon. Now, that kind of brings up the where I was at a while ago. I told Roscoe he'd have to talk to Kenny about it, about them putting electronic ignition on down there. Do you know if Kenny was doing that at all? his request.
Well, I would see everybody put it on the FGH. I think he would put on the airplane if he does.
That's right, okay, he'd have to, yeah, he'd have to break, that's right, he'd have to break it in with regular magnetos on it there.
Take out the right mag. That's if he's gonna ship the engine.
And check out the right mag and then ship it back up and leave the left mag on it.
Yeah, and I'll have everything else mounted in the airplane. Well, I can't break it in with that.
No, you can.
Oh, yeah.
You would have to put all those components up on this test frame. You know, the oil and all that.
Yeah.
You have to mount all that. It's a test frame that's set up. We did that like, so he said, yeah, I'm starting. Or it broke in.
Well, it's not broke in, it's tough in. Oh, it's run in like between an hour and a half and 3.5 hours, depending on what it takes to get them all dialed in.
I think we just had him ship it with one mag.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tested with two, but then they pulled the right magnetic blocking plate. When we get it back, by the time your engine comes back, I'm going to have the 12 pack on the firewall. I'm going to have everything inside the airplane. So all I'm going to do is flip them in that con and snap everything together.
Yeah, and they'll have the harness already set up.
Oh, we have all that.
Forgot the anti-fuel efficiencies. It's not. Really? That's pretty consistent. Yeah, have you been? Yeah, about we like this is wasn't it. Oh, yeah, it's one of the main reasons for doing what electronic emissions. You typically 10-15%. On the Road 360, it's been very consistent. About a gallon per hour.
Shut down.
You change your leading procedures. That's another common question. Change your leading procedures. No. And I will tell you how many guys exactly. Yeah, well, guys, we'll have 14 different opinions.
As two of us are flying the airplane, we both think different.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is talk about the service life of your system versus the magnetos.
Yeah, the service life, this will get replaced. Your next engine overhaul. Not time, your next engine overhaul. Spark plug wires, 5 years or $1,000 in service. That may be something to change the position of wires. Everything else is on condition. Magnetos, you're looking at over $500. If you're doing slick bags, you're going to change. The mandate to see will be changed for $500 only if there's any oil in the bag. Only if there's any oil in the bag. People have misinterpreted that. Just need to say that you had to change the oil. So,
Problem is with that, if there's anything wrong with the bag, $500 next to it.
we're better off.
Well, that's, you know, you can distribute block for $8.
Yeah, distributor block. There is another company that's making some people that sort of thing. That's about it. You have this thing going to No, I don't. Question was, do we ever see going to a dual electronic ignition in the certified? And no, for a couple of reasons. One, because we're powered by B+, that would mandate that we have some sort of a second supply, either a second alternator or a second battery. FAA's kind of changed their position. Their original position was that we need to have a second alternator. They really have backed that down to a second battery. We are in development. This doesn't apply to you guys, but for Bendix dual magneto. But we are putting together a replacement for the Bendix dual magneto, which we use prime system. We'll also use a hybrid magneto. Hybrid magneto is a magneto in the sense that it's a mechanically driven device to create its voltage. But we're using higher energy output. And you throw near plug in that case, spare power, let's backup generator. We'll probably have, depending on the energy, probably 60 amps spare for 12 volt power. So our strategy would be one and one with that one. To modify the device, well, the other reason too, the majority of fleet